Hey everyone, welcome back to part 2 of our episode about college. They can't see us dancing, but we're dancing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
college.
So just if you didn't watch part 1, shame on you. Please go back and watch part 1. But I'll be nice and give you a little summary.
Sweet to us.
Right. Sweet. So last episode, we talked about the difference between BFA and BA. BFA is Bachelor of Fine Arts, BA is Bachelor of Arts. And we talked about how BFA is basically a filtered, specific art practice solely focused on that art, intense focus. And we named some examples of stage performers, including Billy Porter, Audrey McDonald, getting a BFA. Let's see, and then Bachelor of Arts, we talked about being a broad-based education, and it's considered a more well-rounded education compared to BFA. Performers include Lin-Manuel Miranda and Indina Menzel. And then we also added that there are performers who did not get a formal degree, including Hugh Jackman, Leah Salonga, Kristen Chenoweth, Neil Patrick Harris. Most of these people got a practice straight into the art at a very young age. What else did we talk about? We talked about our personal journeys going into theater, with our college education and things like that, and our personal training and how we came into this practice that we love so much. And we talked about doesn't matter to go to college to get a formal education. And we answered no. No, it doesn't.
No. In our humble opinions.
Right.
So go and be great.
No. Right, literally. In our humble opinions, yes. It does not really matter. Overall, success is determined by your personal talent and grit. We did put in a caveat that there are programs that can elevate your individual talents, but without grit, it will not assist you. I really pulled out what Terrence said last time. The best practice is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Practice is practice. Training is training. Experience is experience.
I said that. Oh, I be saying
yes, Terrence. Yes.
Terrence is speaking. I know. I was like, oh my gosh, Terrence, put that on a shirt.
Literally. No, actually, we're selling that. And then lastly, we talked about marginalized groups having a different conversation when it comes to going to college and affording it or finding the support, which it can be a very tough situation or a difficult conversation, which then went into how universities and programs need to show not only diversity, but also inclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
How are these programs including BIPOC members, LGBTQIA plus members, people who are disabled, and so on and more? How are these faculties being trained? And then Natalie and I, we talked about our experience at Butler University, how they brought in a worldly view of trainers across the world, and how we benefited from learning different styles of theater besides the standard white Western American theater. So that's where we are today. The benefits of what? The benefit of enriching our education, our training through the practice of the people that have come before us, the people that are different than us.
Mm-hmm. Different interpretations of theater.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. That part. So what's on y'all minds about that?
Something that's been on my mind. Well, a lot's been on my mind. But let me collect my thoughts. I do think after our last conversation, it's so interesting, and I almost want to maybe do another part of this later with someone who's gone to a BFA musical theater, like a program that we hear a lot or something like that. Because just to like compare the training, not in like a you should have done this or you should have done this way, but in a way just to like get more insight and everything. But I really do believe that if you are only learning from practices that have been taught for like centuries, that were invented by the same white men, you're not really growing and like learning more as much as you could be if you're sure, like you can still learn those practices, but I do think it's very valuable to go out and see what indigenous practices of theater like are, and what like other cultures see theater as or storytelling as. I think learning the basis of storytelling from different cultures' perspectives is very important. I believe as a theater artist, as a storyteller, as a director, as a theater educator, I think that you grow more in your art form if you're learning about more than just the Western white male perspective that we've been kind of drilled to practice. And I think that's how sometimes like we fall into this line of robotic theater instead of individuality. Um, so I think that's been on my mind. Um, I just think it's important to expand your horizon and to learn more than just the one thing.
No, I totally agree, Natalie. I think kind of adding on an extension to that, for me, as someone who didn't like go to school for theater, like for me, especially now, um, diving into being an artist, there will be weeks where I will just read plays, plays by predominantly Black artists, because I don't know, like seeing yourself in a character really translates in how you can grow as an artist. And like in high school, I remember we used to learn under like Meisner and Stanislavski, which is like really great techniques, but also I don't see myself in these scripts. So it's very interesting how the curriculum and how things are written out for what you're going to be learning, like in this semester in this specific class. Does it really cater to everybody in terms of their own personal experiences and how we can attach an experience to a character and to a monologue or to the scene and how we can enrich it? So those are my opinions. Reading is fundamental. Read, honey.
Period. Reading is fundamental. It's so important that our institutions and programs are teaching, different styles of theater. And because not only will it help them practice a more inclusive program when they're bringing in diversity, if they're doing that part, um, those people that they bring in, they'll know that they are actually welcomed and that we can actually practice more things than um, just the white lens. You know what I mean? And also, it just the whole point of theater is to help our society be more, at least in my opinion, to be more empathetic people. In order for us to do that, we need to know the perspectives of the thousands of millions of different types of people that are living on this planet, who all have different ways of expressing stories and their culture and theater. So why not uplift those practices and at least teach them, let us know about them. Give us the books, give us the studies, give us the information. That's what college is about, is to learn. And I think it holds true as to why we all did get a Bachelor of Arts, is because we wanted to know more than just one thing. I can't speak 100% for our BFA program because I didn't do that. But what I do know is that I know things now that are not just theater focused or Western American theater focus that has helped me in my theater journey and in my artistry, including science, history, um, psychology, all of it, everything has helped me in my theater practice. And I am so grateful um, for that education, because I don't want to, I don't, I love being able to tell my story as a Black American, as a Black African American. I love telling my story as that, but I love learning about the other cultures that's influenced America, has influenced this world. I think that's just so cool. It makes us very empathetic people. And I don't know. That's my rant.
Yeah, and I think on that too, Isaiah, like sometimes I fall into the boat of, because I grew up in musical theater and didn't really get into like social justice theater until college, like maybe end of high school into college more so. Um, but like, I mean, and I always knew there was meaning in theater. Like I always found deeper meaning and everything. Like it wasn't just this, it's to escape from the world. Like, yes, it can
Right.
be to escape, but in my opinion, I think if you're only using theater as a vessel to escape from the real world, I don't think that it's really doing its job as much as it could be. Um, like there are those shows where it's like, this is just a fun little show to go see and watch. But even in those shows, you can find meaning because they were all written for a reason. They were written to portray a story. Even the worst musicals ever were written
Right.
to portray a certain message that someone really thought was important to portray, or else no one would have written it. And I think being a well-rounded theater individual and getting different cultural training, and I think also if you're only reading plays and work by predominantly white people, I don't think you're doing the most work you could be doing, because there's always been plays by more than just white people. There's always been storytelling was invented by non-white people. So I think that sometimes we have to remember that, or always you have to remember that. And I think if your curriculum doesn't look like there's everyone under the sun, I think that you're missing out on something, and you shouldn't be doing that. Because that really helped me like open my eyes to like so many different ways to tell a story, because so everyone is so different with how they communicate. And that's what makes it so beautiful, is because everyone writes a story for a reason. And I think like if you're only doing it to like, okay, I'm going to put on this show and I'm going to escape and then I get to go home, go to bed, do it again, you're basically doing like just a normal, like you don't really care about your job situation. And that's not fun, because that's not why I got into theater. It's not what I'm doing here. And I think it's so much more important to have that well-rounded experience. Just know that you can, like, I can use my sociology like teachings to put that into theater and put that into how people's behaviors with each other play out. And there's a lot of abstract theater I really like. And it's been a whole like mishmash of different stuff I like, because there's so many different things I've been taught to enjoy. And I've been introduced to so many different like ways to tell a story. And I think that's very important.
For real. When you were talking, Ellie, I was thinking about one of the classes I took in college was actually a film class. Like it was just a class where we just studied film. And I remember at the end where we had to get the survey of our class. You know how in college they're always like, make sure you take the survey. It helps me grow as a like a teacher or whatever, professor. And I'm just like, okay, fine, I'll take the survey, do the survey, extra credit, whatever. And well, it was interesting because one of the points in this film class is it's so interesting because I took this is why I people ask me movies, films, yada yada yada. I'm just like, because I took a film class in both um high school and college, so like my whole perception of film is very warped because I'm looking at it from a critique, like what does this one scene and image mean? So it's like film is very weird for me. But going back to college, and how Natalie was talking about if we're kind of always getting the like white lens of stories. I forget what the professor's name is. I don't even think I can say his name. But my professor, when the survey at the end of the semester, I was just saying how yeah, the class was cool, but we always like the majority of films that we saw were from like a white lens where we were either looking at a Scorsese or what is it, Martin Scorsese film, or was Christopher Nolan or like some other. I'm just like, there was one film where we watched. It was a Spike Lee film, Do the Right Thing, and there was one other foreign film. But I was like, the rest of the semester, we just stayed on these like white stories, and I put that in my survey. I was like, I didn't really relate to it because again, I'm like I don't have that experience. I can't relate to this experience on a level that you can appreciate because you're a white man. And I think it's kind of it does more harm than good because the amount of people that want to go into film or want to go into the arts as someone who is black, queer, non-binary, female, non-white, where it's like, well, if this is the curriculum that's set up, is it for me? Because I don't see myself. So I think those are very important conversations that we had too. Truly.
So the people that might be watching or are listening to this episode, what they might be asking, so why is it so important that we are not fed the same material through a white lens that we know we have been being fed white education for decades and so on. Why is it important that we are exposed to different information and things like that, different theater perspectives and practices? What does that serve our artists? What does that serve our country, our worldview? What does that say or do for the future of theater?
I think it's important because when we go back to the like origins of like what theater is and like art from a performance lens, it's important because we're theater is essentially just telling stories about real things that like that have happened. I think Viola Davis said it best in one of my favorite Viola Davis like award or acceptance speeches is during the Academy Awards where she is talking about we like how we as artists are the only profession that um tells what it means to live a life. And when I tell y'all after I was like, it's first of all, it's Viola Davis, so queen. And then two, it just really put in perspective for me like why I wanted to pursue this so much because that's what like you're doing. You're just exhuming a life. You're exhuming a body where you're telling a story that whose story has probably never been told. And the fact that somebody sat down and wanted to write this and tell this story is just so important and captivating in itself, which is why theater is just so important.
I love that you mentioned that, Terrence, and I want to add to that that I I really want like people who are viewers and consumers of theater, who might not be the practitioners of theater, that art, any type of art, honestly, and especially stage theater, is a practice of creating culture. We this is game changing. Like seriously, when people see a show, we are influencing thoughts and changing the way that people interact with each other on a daily basis. It's very, I really take this as important work. Um, Theater is just a bougie way of people sitting around a campfire and telling stories. It's a bougie way of making people, how do I want to put this? Of helping people to come together. So I think that's a great point. Yeah, I think it's a very important work.
And I think, I mean, we're all kind of saying similar things in different fonts as we usually do. But like another thing that really like got me when I started doing more, and like we're talking a lot about Butler and everything. Butler has its flaws, as does every theater school, no matter what. But something that really stuck with me was our indigenous theater training, and learning about, because I mean, indigenous people to me were some of the first people to tell stories in a big way, and to document stories like that's like through art. Um, and I remember one fact I learned that just like got my whole perspective like all rearranged, um, was that Green Grow the Lilacs, a play by Lynn Riggs, who is an indigenous person. I believe it was written, I'll have to fact check myself, but like 1930s around then. Um, was actually the play that Oklahoma the musical is based off of. Green Grow the Lilacs never got successful, and it was about Native people, and all the names in it are the exact same characters in Oklahoma, like Lori, Curly, Auntie Eller, I think, and all the characters basically the same concept, like same story, but got plucked. I'm not sure if the origins of it got stolen and no credit was given. I never heard anything about like the original play until I had class with my great professor. Um, and she told us about that. And Green Grow the Lilacs was only performed on Broadway 64 times, but Oklahoma has been the one that we know about. But it's the same story, but one was written by an indigenous person. And it's not the one that people do all the time. So I just think learning stuff like that puts it into perspective so much, because it's then not as shallow, and it's not just for one group of people. And having an education, and I know this we keep on, but I think we're all very passionate. I don't want to speak for both of you, but like I think like I'm very passionate about just making sure that you are covering more than just the one base of theater, and making sure you're meeting people and discussing important, having crucial conversations and discussing topics that may be uncomfortable, because you should have those conversations. You should learn about stories that are more than just the Rodgers and Hammerstein, as much as those musicals can be fun, but there's so much more to unpack. And I just think that's very interesting, and I'm very blessed to have had a curriculum where I wasn't just reading works by a white man. Like I was reading so much more than that. So that made me feel like I was a bit more well-rounded for myself and what I want to do with theater as well.
What does that say for the future of theater? If we are learning more um, diverse theater practices, learning about our history, as you were pointing out, Natalie, of how a lot of our people are getting erased in our history, and now we're bringing them forth, trying to promote them more. What do you expect, or what do you think we can see in the future of theater if we are more supportive in this more diverse perspective?
This is a great question. I like this
Now,
question a lot. I think you get new stories, which seems to like such a silly answer, but like if you bring people to the forefront that don't get to be the one to fall in love usually, that don't get to be the one that gets to get the girl or get the guy or whatever, or fall in love, or like have Strange Loop is just like in my head. But I think Strange Loop was such a big smack in the face of Broadway, because it told a story that everyone was like, whoa, this is off-Broadway material, you know? Like, people were shocked, and I was like, thank God, because it just shows me that people are so interesting, and there's so many of us, and we all have the ability to fall in love, to feel love, to be like to be loved, but to show multi-dimensional personalities and to feel like we're more than just the big girl who's funny, the black man who's aggressive, you know, stuff that is so stereotypical is finally, while we're pushing, while we're starting to bring like minority voices to the forefront, we're actually seeing new stories that are impactful. That Terrence was like, I can read a story and relate to it. Like I have waited my whole life to see big bodies on stage falling in love. And I remember as a child, I was like, if even if I'm the first one to show that to myself, you know, and like being Audrey in Little Shop was a big thing for me. Like that really was a big deal for me. And because growing up, I wish I could have seen that. I wish I could have seen someone with some curves like actually fall in love on stage or in a movie or something where she wasn't just a joke, you know? And I mean, this is kind of a rant, but yeah, like I love seeing that there are new stories now coming out because people are just now realizing that there are more people in the world than this like very slim cookie cutter couple, because that's not reality. Also, that is not the world you walk around in and wake up in every day. That is not what it is.
No, but for real, like, so it was interesting because, okay, not to brag, but I saw Strange Loop 3 times. Wanted to go every single chance I could get, but you know, the funds. And
Must be nice.
yes. So yes, Natalie, everything you said about that. But it's also one other question I have about putting minority stories to the forefront is how do we put those stories on Broadway, but also how do we keep those stories on Broadway? Because for Strange Loop winning Best Musical, it was like it closed its run. What was it? 6 months, I want to say. Fact check me on that. Like very shortly after it won the Tony.
Which is also, it's been debatably one of the best. It's been the best original musical that we've seen in a long time. In my most in my most annoyed opinion, it has been
Really.
like fully, which has been bullshit that it got closed that quick.
No facts. Let me just pull out all of my Strange Loop merch. But no, for real, because like it's honestly probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And to answer the question of how the original question, can we just like, you know, kill white men?
I'm screaming. Not
We're
the
gonna see
whisper
Terrence
into the
getting like
screen.
dragged out of his window by the FBI.
Right, no, literally. But was that Jane Fonda video on The View? Like, I mean, but it's just there's so much of them. But, no, but I mean that could be a solution, maybe. But for real,
It's getting more and more.
they're gonna call me a terrorist. It's fine.
I mean, but until they back down, we really won't see these minority stories in the
right.
forefront, because do most of the white men in charge want to see bigger bodies fall in love on stage? No. Do they want to see queer stories on stage? No. Well, some of them maybe.
Right.
Do we want it? But do they want to see minority POC queer love stories? Probably not. Do they want to see anything but what they can only relate to? No, because until we get people in those spaces and make tables for ourselves, because if no one's going to invite us, we're making our own tables.
Period.
So we have to make our own tables to make ourselves be the ones where we're going to make stories where we can relate to them. Because if that's what the war is going to be, that's what it has to be.
Boom.
Natalie said war.
No.
This is
know,
a very
like-
this is a very militant podcast. We're getting very militant out here.
Listen, I threatened a strike before we even started this pod today.
Period.
I'm just in
No,
a
but-
strike mood.
Yes.
No, but like seriously, y'all, like I think to answer Terrence's question, more people have to be interested in seeing different types of shows. I think the advertisement of shows need to be better. And who is providing the money? Who's providing the funds? I want to see them. You know what I mean? I want to see what their influence is. That's I think a lot of the problem lies there too.
Yeah. I also think because of that, tying it back into education,
Yeah.
is that
Oh
I
my
think
gosh, yeah.
that all BA and all BFA programs should require you to take an arts admin class, at least one. I think
Oh,
that
there
should
it
be a
is.
requirement because we are our own managers. Why shouldn't we? You know, why shouldn't we?
Oh.
Any arts program, if you are an artist, you should be required to take an arts, and as much as we don't like a business situation, and I will be the first one. I'm terrible at math. I know this. I know thyself. But it is nice to know if I'm being played or not and how I can talk a certain way to get in certain rooms because sometimes you gotta play the game to get in there and then you can sorry, I was gonna use another war-like word. You have to be educated in that way or look up, do research to know how to get in those rooms and to be like, this is what we need to change. And I know what I'm talking about because I know how to speak about this stuff. And
Period.
sometimes that's what they don't teach you. And that's how we get bamboozled into being robots, I think, too. Because we're relying on other people to
Yes.
cast us all the time.
And I would say, going back to Isaiah's point about who's writing the checks, I want these bitches to. Okay, if you're going to sign on to be producing my very Black, very queer, very outwardly not white show, and I win the Tony Award for Best Musical, and you the main one who produced the money, and I go in with the Tony Award, you need to sit your ass down and let me be the one to speak in, and not you out here taking up all my airtime to say thank you. I need you to be in the corner. Thank you for the check, but be still. Thank you for the money, but it's realism.
Okay. Well,
and now I think we're starting a whole new topic for a
No,
whole
for real.
podcast.
I think Terrence and Allie so much. This and everyone listening. I think this was a great talk and a great part 2 to our episode. Moral of the story, I really hope everyone that's listening that you took away some information, some confidence into your journey into theater. And I really hope that there are going to be more people who are not afraid to tell their own story, their own journey in theater, so that we can learn and make this world just a better place. Period. So that's so like cliche, but like seriously, all this place on earth, we would just want it to be a better place. So thank you all for listening. See you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to General Admission. General Admission is produced by Terrence Lambert, Isaiah Moore, and Natalie Fisher. Our editing engineer is Aaron Smith. Our director of social media marketing is Jenica Albert. Our music is by Maxine Wilkins, and our graphic design is by Paige Jones. Until next time, bye!